doors of the house are the original doors from the 1900 period. I mean, they're beautiful, beautiful old doors, and it's really part of the character of the house that we wanted to be able to put back into it. There's a lot of work that goes into hanging old doors. When you hang a door today at the store, most of them are pre-hung doors. So the door will come fixed on a jamb, and all you really have to do is put the jamb up, shim it in place, make sure it's level, and you have a functioning doorway. But when you're hanging these old antique doors from 1910, they don't come with a door jamb, and they're not even the right size for standard door jambs that you buy at the store today. So how do you put these doors up on the house? So for starters, you're going to start with a door jamb, because the width of a door jamb fits perfectly for your 2x4 walls with drywall. So it's kind of a standard width. You're only going to find it in the door jambs. Just go ahead and buy the door jambs. The number one problem that you're going to find is that the door is often taller or shorter than the door jambs. So when you're putting everything together, your first step after getting the door jamb is going to be to size the door correctly. Now, the doors that we have, a lot of them just aren't plumb. So they're different widths at the top and the bottom. Some of them are falling apart. A lot of them are too tall for the door jambs. So the first thing we did was we cut the doors down and we plumbed them up. We shaved the edges, whatever we had to do to square them up, because it's really hard to hang a door that's not square. Every single door we had to do, we had to cut shorter, because the doors themselves are about 81.5 inches and the door jamb is only 81.25. And you really only want about 1/8 of an inch gap at the top of the door and maybe 1/4 of an inch down at the bottom, unless you're planning to have carpeting in your house. So the first thing we did on the doors, standard across all the doors, was measure out the door and get it cut. And a trick when you're cutting these doors, we wrapped the bottoms of our doors in painter's tape to prevent any splintering. And then we used some clamps to set up a kind of a perfect board or guide for ripping down the bottom of the doors, or the tops of the doors. We took a little bit off the top and a little bit off the bottom. This is a little bit of an art. But for more information on ripping down wood, check out some of our videos. We'll put one out specifically on ripping wood. And for more information on clamping and even clamping together doors to repair where doors are falling apart, check out some of our videos. We'll have specific videos for door repairs. So rolling ahead, once you have the door plumb and square and perfectly cut, the next step that you're going to have in this process is aligning the door with hinges, because at this point the door jamb is a clean slate. There are no hinges. You're going to have to use a router to put the hinges on the door jamb. So you're going to lay the door flat and again measure out, kind of set your one side of the door jamb down and figure out where the hinges go, so that again you have about 1/8 of an inch on the top and 1/4 of an inch on the bottom. And once you have your door set with that side of the door jamb, you're going to go ahead and you're going to mark your door jamb where the hinges go. And then you can apply a router template to the actual door jamb and run your router over the door jamb. Now there's a lot of work that's going to go into just that. You have to measure out the depth of the hinges. You have to set your router so it's perfectly on the hinges. We can get more into detail on that a little later. Right now I just want to run through the whole thing. So Once you have your hinges routed into the door jamb, your next step is to measure the top plate of the door jamb, because this top plate is what is going to set the width of the door. And you want to have just a little bit of spacing so the door will actually close. So we measured out the width of the tops of our door jambs and got them perfectly measured for each doorway. So every door jamb that we're putting together is custom per the door that we're working with. And if it's a 32-inch door and it measures out exactly 32 inches wide, then you're probably going to do 32 inches and a quarter, and then you've got a little extra room there for where the top of the door jamb goes into the side of the door jamb. So there's a lot of measuring here that you're doing, but it all is worth it to do this ahead of time and kind of put all your pieces together before you start putting it up on the wall. Once you have everything cut, you have your hinges figured out, and you're ready to put it up, you're going to just lay the parts of the door jamb out on the ground and tack the top of the door jamb into the two sides. And then you'll lean it up into the doorway, and at this point you're ready to start shimming out the doorway. Now when you shim it out, what you're basically doing is you're putting in wood shims, and you're trying to make sure that the door jamb is plumb and, perfectly level, going up and down the inside of the doorway. So the way you make sure that it's plumb as you're putting in the shims is you use about a 4-foot level, and you move it up and down the door, and you're checking inside that level to make sure that the doorway itself is flat against the level, the bubble is perfectly even in center so that everything's level, everything's plumb. This could be a long process, but it's also a very easy process. You're just going to shove in the shims at different sections of the door and then nail them in place until you get all the way down to the bottom, and then work your way across the top and work your way across down the other side. Shimming a door is not very difficult. It seems like a daunting task, but once you have a few doorways down, you'll see it's a very easy thing to do. So you shim in your doorway, and so the next step is going to be securing the entire door jamb. So everything is in place, it's secure, it's shimmed in, you know it's level, and then now we're just going to hang the door. If you're doing everything perfectly, you should be able to just take the door and hold it in and screw in the hinges and put the door up. We actually pre-drilled our hinges after we measured out where the door jambs go, and I would suggest doing that because that way you know exactly where the hinges are supposed to be screwed in. But most of the time when you hang a door after you've shimmed everything in, you've measured everything out, it's not going to work correctly this time. Closed correctly, there's going to be something that is just a hair off, and it's going to throw off the entire doorway. And this is where you just really have to learn to start maneuvering and playing with different parts of the door to figure out how to get the door to fit correctly and have it opening and closing the way it should. I can't possibly explain all of that to you on a few videos. We could show you on some videos where we ran into issues with doorways and how we fixed them. And hopefully as you work your way through some of these problems over time, the doorways will get easier and easier and easier for you. But the basic problem that you'll have is when you close the door, a lot of times the door will pop back out. And you can watch the hinges and see where it's binding and see which hinge is causing the problem. And then you just kind of have to open and close the door several times and watch that hinge and see if the hinge is set too deep, if you need to shim it out. If you do need to shim it out, you can use cardboard to actually shim out your hinges and level them out a little more. But this isn't going to be an easy task. You're going to have to really watch all these hinges and see where your problem areas are. If the door closes and hits along the other side of the jamb, then you may need to take a chisel and chisel out part of the doorway in order to level out the door. So we'll explain in detail how we have worked with certain problem doors in other videos. But for the purposes of hanging the door, this is where you work out the kinky spots. Once you've worked out all the kinky spots, the only things you have left are trimming out the outside and putting in your doorstop. The doorstop is just done by closing the door and holding it flush up. And then you'll hold it flush with the door jamb. And then on the other side, you'll run a pencil around it and mark where the doorway is. That pencil line becomes the line for where your doorstop is going to go. And then all you have to do is simply tack in your doorstop. So hopefully I've explained a few things to you about hanging old doors in the house. You're going to want to watch some of our other videos because we're going to go into more detail on how to repair old doors and working out certain kinks that you'll run into while you're putting these doorways together. But the first thing you're going to have to do is get the door plumb and square, trim it, whatever it is that you have to do to make it fit the door jamb. Then you're going to actually align your hinges on the door jamb. You're going to router in the hinges, and we'll have a video on just routing in hinges. And then you'll frame out the remainder of your door jamb, measure out your top piece, shim in the entire door jamb, and voila, you're ready to go. But pay attention to our other videos. We'll do more shimming, we'll do more door jambs, we'll do more encased openings, and we'll do more door repairs until you've got this thing nailed down.